I know the winter may seem like an odd time of the year to be talking about flowering bulbs, but actually it's this time of year that many growers are taking their potted bulbs out of the coolers and bringing them inside to begin forcing them into flower. This is done to give us all the earliest possible taste of spring. Now last fall, in early October, I decided to do this myself. I potted up a few daffodils and tulips and gave them the required minimum 8 weeks of temperatures under 50 or so degrees, and now they're beginning to emerge from the tops of the pots. This, along with all of these white roots, was my cue to go ahead and bring them inside. Now I'll just pop them in a container like this, and in a few weeks they'll be in full bloom. Now while this is exciting for me to see with potted bulbs, it's always a little bit unnerving to see them emerging in the garden with plenty of winter still ahead. These daffodils are already a couple of inches tall. If this is already occurring in your garden, it's really nothing to get alarmed about. You see, these little guys are equipped with a certain amount of antifreeze that can help them get through extreme temperatures. Now, the only time to really be concerned is once the flower has completely opened. For any bulbs that have come up early, about the only thing you can do is apply a layer of mulch. This will help keep them warm, and it'll help protect them if they're stepped on. But for me, what it does is it makes me feel like I've done everything I can for them. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith. Whether you've started your spring planting or not, it's well underway behind the scenes. In fact, growers have been preparing all winter long for that big spring splash. Many of the beautiful annuals we enjoy in our gardens each year begin at large seed companies like this. This is where new and improved varieties are constantly being developed. Then the seeds are sold to growers like this one, and they're nurtured into seedlings like this, and you can see all these little guys are packed in here like sardines. Then they're separated and planted individually, and then grown off until they're mature enough for us to use in our gardens. If you're interested in growing some of your own bedding plants from seed, it's time to get started. If you've ever grown something like tomatoes, you know it doesn't take long until it's time to transfer them into larger containers. Recently, I came across this little gizmo, which allows me to make my own biodegradable containers with newspaper. It's easy to do. You begin by cutting a 3.5 inch by 10 inch strip of newspaper. Then you wrap a strip around the wooden cylinder and fold the edges down at the end. The molded base allows you to tightly press them into shape. Now they're ready to fill with soil and whatever seedlings you've grown. After these have grown off a bit and conditions are right, I can plant this directly in the garden. I think this is a nice alternative to having all those plastic pots pile up around the house. If you'd like to know where you can get one of these little gizmos, check out our website. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith. During the winter, the pace in the garden is at its slowest, but it's an excellent time to take care of many of those chores we don't have time to do during the spring and summer when we're so busy. A good example of this is having your soil tested. Growing flowers, vegetables, or even lawns successfully begins with the soil. It's important to know exactly what's in it. Understanding its composition can help you determine whether or not you need to make any changes. It's actually very simple to do, but there are a few things you'll want to know. First, take several small samples from various places in the area you're considering. These samples should be taken at a depth of about 4 inches, and a cup or so from each one is about right. Just collect it in a bucket. Now the soil should be moist but not full of water. Now it's ready to be sent off for analysis. But what exactly can these test results tell you? Well, they can indicate the soil pH. You can know whether the soil is acidic, neutral, or alkaline. It can also tell you the amount of minerals and the levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the most essential elements for plants. And many reports will make recommendations on the amounts and blends of fertilizers to be applied. A soil test may not tell you everything you need to know about your soil, even though all the nutrients may be in place. You see, texture is also important. That's why I'm always working in as much humus as I can. You see, I like my soil rich and loose. Government agencies and labs offer soil testing, but spring is their busiest time, so make sure you get your samples in early. I really don't do much baking, but there are certain recipes that have become favorites of mine over the years, and they can always lure me back into the kitchen. One of these is for a simple cookie, and it includes one of my favorite herbs, rosemary. This is regarded as the herb of remembrance and friendship, so it's certainly appropriate to use it around the beginning of the new year when so many friends and family get together. It all begins with a basic sugar or butter cookie recipe of your choice. I just blend together a half a cup of butter with a half a cup of shortening, a cup and a half of sugar, and 2 eggs. Now that this is nice and creamy, I'm ready to stir in the dry ingredients, which include 2 3/4 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar, 1 teaspoon of soda, and about 1/4 teaspoon of salt, all blended together. Be sure to sift your flour before you add it. Now I'm ready for the most important ingredient, at least when it comes to flavor. I'm using 2 scant teaspoons of fresh chopped rosemary. Now I'm forming the dough into small balls and placing them on an ungreased baking sheet. I like to press them with the bottom of a drinking glass that I've dipped in sugar. This gives them a nice crunchy glaze. Now I'm ready to slide them into a preheated 400-degree oven for only about 8 minutes. It's a good idea to loosen the cookies as soon as you take them from the oven. This is a great way to enjoy both the flavor and aroma of rosemary. This time of year, there are reminders everywhere that I need to do a little spring cleaning. Now, these aren't jobs that I'm particularly fond of doing, but when it comes to my garden, I'm willing to put forth a little more effort. And it starts with cleaning some of my bird feeders, particularly hummingbird feeders. And I try to get this done before the little guys arrive. Over the course of a season, a bird feeder can become grimy. And because there are so many little nooks and crannies in them, they can be difficult to clean. I used a method in cleaning these hummingbird feeders that made the job much easier. I prepared a cleaning solution of 1 part vinegar to 4 parts water. And since using a brush on these narrow neck bottles can be difficult, I used a handful of rice to serve as an abrasive to clean the insides of the bottle. Tube feeders can be even more of a challenge because there are so many parts to them. So I just remove whatever I can, and then I use a solution of bleach and water to soak all of the parts. And if you find soaking alone doesn't do the trick, you may have to use a little elbow grease and maybe even a toothbrush to get down into some of these little tighter areas like this. For wooden feeders, I avoid using bleach, but I use a mild dishwashing detergent and a stiff bristled brush to clean them up. Now I'll rinse them thoroughly and let them dry completely before I refill them. You know, I wish all of my spring cleaning could be this easy. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith.